Black Talk Media Project, a US-based nonprofit, has operated the premier online Black Talk radio network for 9 years. The organization has helped independent Black media producers establish their own digital radio stations and platforms. However, it is time to expand our work based on the vision of founder Scotty Reed, a U.S. Army veteran and communication specialist who wants to build the Black version of National Public Radio with community talk radio stations and media centers across the USA. These stations and media centers will focus on developing local talk radio hosts, addressing local community issues, and providing classrooms to teach new media production. We can accomplish this goal without corporate and government grants, maintaining true independence. Donate to the Black Talk Media Project or obtain a subscription to the social media platform btrcommunity.com for just $24 annually. Help us establish new Black media for the new millennium.
Yeah, man, I was bragging about you, I really feel like you're a brother who could take what you know now and incorporate what you've been doing probably for your entire life and make some serious changes, because you're not that type to sit back and let things happen. I've seen you involved in everything, including the Black Lives Matter movement that branched out in Charleston, and as I mentioned earlier, organizing the Days of Grace events, working with the dock workers union down there and educating them and incorporating their assistance into the movements that you're involved in, man. So yeah, I'm very proud to know you, and it has been a pleasure and an honor to be a warrior at your side on several occasions.
Much blessings, big brother. Appreciate the awakening to understanding the storyline. Each time we get to have another jewel that adds to the storehouse of jewels that we get to reveal within this work. We just become more powerful for it, and the movement becomes more powerful for it, and the truth shines a lot brighter for it.
Word, man. Why don't you tell us a little about who you are, the man behind the stories, if you don't mind, and what it is you're working on right now and some of the plans for the future. And also, if you get the opportunity, you made a wonderful suggestion earlier today when you were saying that tomorrow is the September 17th is the 228th anniversary of the signing of the U.S. Constitution. And we celebrate that tomorrow on Constitution Day, and maybe we should get together and do something constructive for that day to bring awareness to the 13th Amendment.
Yeah, that's a great idea, brother. Point out the fact that the debate that they was having around the Constitution, whether or not to abolish slavery during that time, that, hey, that debate still ain't over and we still ain't abolished slavery.
Truth be told, in my journeys as a first of a Black man, and then moving into an African, and even deeper into a Gullah Geechee, my experience has been that the deeper my history can go into the reality of how the laws, the constructs, and the threat of violence and the savagery of white supremacy has impacted my mindset and how I move in this world. And so as I understand exactly how the laws, practices, policies, and procedures have been laid out to create systems of inequity that seem justified and enforced by law upon me and my people to a degree that's different than European descent, when I live in that reality, like, there's a sense of justice that never got turned off. And I definitely give thanks and praise to my Baha'i faith, to my dad's Islamic faith, to my grandparents' Pentecostal faith, and my other grandparents' Jehovah's Witness faith, for allowing me to understand that, when your sense of justice is turned all the way up, you got a lot of work to do. But when you allow that sense of justice to be turned down just enough that you are self-preserving, that you are protecting your reputation, that you're not able to speak the truth to the power, that you're able to tell children that that's just the way it is, or that's the way it's always going to be. When we continue to do stuff like that, we're stealing their sense of justice. We're stealing their humanity. And that's happened on both sides in this white supremacy game. We have European brothers and sisters that have been assimilated into a whiteness that allows them to stand while prejudice is in their presence. We have blackness that has been assimilated into white supremacy that stands silent and takes that oppression. And so we have a sense of justice that is underdeveloped. And I would say that within the Black Lives Matter movement, one of the things that we're doing as we gain our maturity is understanding that that sense of justice has to go far beyond understanding the constructs that we're given to operate in, the constructs of thinking about police brutality without thinking about the constructs that actually created the police to begin with in our surroundings. The context of why those police were there and who hired them. The capitalists that started this whole experiment of American slavery, you know, the police have always done their bidding. And so this is not a new thing, and it's an old story, and it's such an old story that when we don't tell it all the way from the time before we got to these shores, then we miss out on important knowledge like the 13th Amendment.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And you mentioned the history. Like, you know, understanding the history gives you a better perspective of everything, particularly the history of why we have these police the way we do right now. We were just talking on our last broadcast about how, we were talking about it, Scotty Reed and I were talking about it on one of his broadcasts, about how these police have quotas, for instance, in New York and very likely in Charleston as well, and all across America. And if you keep hiring these police to fill these quotas, it's just going to show that you need more police, and they're just going to keep arresting people to fill those quotas, whether there is a crime committed or not. And when they run out of crimes, they're going to have their lawmakers make more crimes so they don't lose their jobs. And it just keeps spreading more and more to criminalize an entire people. The Southern police, in particular in Charleston, still wear a badge that shows exactly how far back their origins go as slave catchers.
This is the truth. We had Andy Savage, who's a lawyer for Michael Slager. As a part of Michael Slager's defense, Michael Slager told that the reason he stopped Walter Scott was because he had to fulfill a quota of 3 stops. And then he tried to shirk his responsibility onto the mayor and the police chief. In doing that, they're starting to tell on each other. And if we're getting to this point, that means we got to leverage, and we have a truth force to actually bring the story to light of exactly what policies, practices, and procedures are actually retaining this system of white supremacy and slavery. I'm particularly interested in naming those practices and procedures and then being able to abolish them, and being able to keep track of how a policy that's enacted, such as the policies of the war on drugs, you know, had an impact almost immediately. We have the ability to aggregate big data sets right now to see those trends lines before they actually impact our community in detrimental ways. And so I'm definitely in a solutions mindset. I do think that we all have a sense of how they're moving, but I'm not sure if we have a sense of what to do to dismantle the way that they're moving.
Well, I know you helped put together proposals of reform, presented them at least successfully on one occasion and unsuccessfully on one other occasion to Charleston, I guess would be the mayor's office.
Yeah, the mayor and then the Public Safety Committee, yep.
And the Public Safety Committee, looking for changes then. I remember you reaching out to me with some advice of what I would like to add to that conversation. And of course, that was how we really got into the abolitionist conversation to begin with. But how does the reforms that you proposed to them, have they incorporated those now, particularly including the Citizens Review Board?
No, of course not. the reforms that we are asking for are structural reforms. And so when you talk about structural reforms, you're talking about changing power dynamics, and people in power are not interested in changing power dynamics. So a citizen review board that has investigatory powers, that has subpoena powers, that would allow the community to actually have oversight with teeth to pull their card anytime that they're messing around in our community and doing something that they shouldn't be doing. It allows us to actually impact the training and the policies of how they deploy their weaponry, when they deploy it. Allows us to create policies that affect the advancement, how they advance, when they get demoted, why they get demoted, and where the community's voice is, and actually identifying what policing policies would actually work in a particular community. But we're moving into a whole nother realm as we're learning and we're growing, because that was reform, and we need to get and adopt the language of abolishment. And so we're moving towards abolishing the right of an officer to carry lethal weaponry. We're looking towards to the point of abolishing police from our neighborhoods and actually developing the capacity to meet the mental health needs of our own community, to meet because that's what we look at addiction. We look at it as a mental health need, because those are our family members. We're not walking around thinking that we're living next to criminals. And anytime that we adopt that language, we're practicing white supremacy. So we're not talking about black and black crime. We're talking about brothers and sisters that are dealing with something internally that need some love and need some support and need us to rally around them, develop some economic independence, so we can eat however we need to eat. That's not going to be stepping on each other's toes. And so the discourse that we're kind of moving into is away from the whole reform ideology. We understand that there's already been a movement for civil equality and to be able to sit down and to have these reforms. The 13th Amendment was a reform of slavery. I mean, we're done with these reforms. Let's get into this abolition. 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 Abolition.